Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars, welcome to another PlayStation 5 review. Today's review is for Far Cry 6. Now, I'm quite late getting around to this review, and that's essentially when this was initially released quite late into last year. I wasn't overly interested in playing it, certainly straight away. And the main reason for that is I am not like a Far Cry mega fan or anything like that, or a real enthusiast for the Far Cry games. I have played an awful lot of them, but I don't recall ever completing a Far Cry game before. And I've certainly, I didn't put a lot of time into Far Cry 2. I've played Far Cry 3 and 4 and 5, and honestly, my favourite Far Cry game up to this point has been Far Cry New Dawn. You know, the post-apocalyptic one that followed Far Cry 5. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was different. They tried to experiment with a few game mechanics in that. And I really quite enjoyed that one. Now, Far Cry 6 is, and I know a lot of reviewers have already said this, it really does have the DNA of the other Far Cry games. So those of you who are expecting a real change here for a Far Cry game, you're either going to be really happy to hear that very little has changed, or really disappointed to hear that very little has changed. And that really depends on your love for the Far Cry franchise, I suppose. This game to me feels like Ubisoft, and they've been doing this, I think, certainly since Far Cry New Dawn, have been experimenting with this franchise. They've added in like building mechanics, like base building, and I remember they had that in Far Cry New Dawn. They've done it again here in this game. And there's like the RPG elements. They keep experimenting with like this RPG elements in the Far Cry games, certainly the last couple. And they just haven't quite laid the hat on just what direction they want to take this franchise in. But I get the impression that if they really build on some of these mechanics they are testing out, it feels, in these games, like the base building, like the RPG elements, I think they could have a really special game going forwards. But that's not to say that I haven't had a real ball with this game, because I'd be lying if I said I haven't. I really enjoyed my time playing Far Cry 6. There's an awful lot in this game that is just wonderful fun to play, and there's lots of bloatedness to it as well. What's the story here in Far Cry 6? Well, I'm sure many of you already know, and I'll briefly give you an outline of it. You essentially play a guerrilla fighter or a freedom fighter in a fictional country called Yara. There is a brutal dictator that is running the country, that is forcing its population into slavery, really, to build like this super drug that is a cure for cancer. And you join with a series of freedom fighters that are scattered throughout the country for you all to come together and unite and fight back. Now, that's all really I'm going to say on the story here. Now, I think one of the things that they've really got right this time in Far Cry 6 is the central protagonist, the freedom fighter, the guerrilla that you play, Danny. You actually feel like a real person this time in Far Cry, which is certainly the first time I can remember in a Far Cry game. It's always felt like you've been like the silent protagonist to some degree in these games. This time, it really does feel like you're part of the story, and it really does help you to get involved in the story here. And there's like a third-person perspective shows up in all of the cutscenes, and whenever you go into like one of your base camps, it goes into like a third-person perspective. So it really feels like, you know, you are a character this time and you're part of the story. And the story itself I actually really enjoyed too. I thought it was well written. Yes, it's a bit goofy at times. There are some goofy characters in it, but it wouldn't be a Far Cry game without it. It kind of skips between this really serious storyline, and there's like these uneasy, goofy comedic moments in the game that it struggles to balance it out, but you've got to remind yourself at the end of the day, it's a video game. It's not like a Amazon Prime TV show or anything that's supposed to be taken really seriously. The voice acting is brilliant. There's a few celebrity cameos. There's some missions you can do with Danny Trejo, you know, the actor from Heat, and Machete and things like that, which I thought was really funny and cool and right light-hearted missions. So there's lots to do here in the game, is what I'm trying to say. It balances it out with some fairly serious main missions and some very serious like main story cutscenes to this light-hearted side of the game as well. And it struggles to balance it out, but it does a decent job of it, I have to say. The game structure, again, you'll feel immediately comfortable with. It's a huge map, broken into like sections, and there's like different freedom fighters that rule those sections of the map, and it's for you to get in touch with those freedom fighters in that map, gain their trust by doing missions with them, gain control of that map by doing the main missions, but also by taking over checkpoints, by taking over enemy bases, by blowing up like the guns that will shoot you out of the air. So you slowly take control of the map, and then you kind of move on to the next section of the map. And I actually really like that as well. And another thing that I think this game has always struggled, certainly I've struggled with, is the size of the maps are so big, traversing them can be a bit of a pain in the backside. I mean, it can be fun as well, depending on the vehicle that you're using. But it's actually been quite clever here in a sense of you can open up like fast travel points fairly easily just by having discussions sometimes with other like guerrillas on the game. They'll give you information, or you will find notes hidden around that will give you locations of like fast travel points, all that kind of stuff, and hunting spots. So once you open up these fast travel points, you can move to all different areas of the map and really feel like you can have these three storylines running alongside each other. Yes, there's a little bit of level gating going on here, which they've been experimenting in the last couple of games, and depending on your thoughts on level gating, it will really depend on that, really, what you think of that. And by that I mean certain sections of the map it might say you need to be level 7, 8, 9 to partake in it. Other levels, sections of the map, it'll be level 2, 3, 4 sort of thing. So you've got to have the right equipment and weapons to go to certain areas of the map. But to be honest, I've not found it particularly overly challenging to go anywhere on the map. Once you get to about a level 6 or 7, you can pretty much go most places on the map and get away with it depending on the weapons. The one thing I'm not keen on is the fact that you don't level up your character anymore. You kind of level up the weapons. And by that I mean some weapons you can give soft target rounds, some weapons you can give armor piercing rounds, some weapons you can give like explosive rounds, poison rounds. And depending on where you are on the map or what base you're going to invade or whatever, if you scan them with your phone, it'll tell you what rounds they are weak against. To me, I just think this doesn't work as an idea. You just don't want to keep going in and out of your menu, swapping out your weapons to make it more effective against a certain enemy on a certain part of the map. So generally speaking, I didn't do that. I just kind of made do with the weapon that I had. And most of the time that worked. Yes, they do become bullet sponges a little bit. But I did find that frustrating, and I hope they don't move forward with that mechanic in regards to the game. I thought the game had quite a good variety of enemies. You'll get attacked by standard bad guys, you'll get guys in armor, you'll get guys with flamethrowers, all sorts of different enemies. You'll get guys in tanks, trucks, helicopters coming at you, and you can have a real good time in this playground of just blowing stuff up constantly. The base building, for me, it just isn't extensive enough. If they're going to do base building, I really do think they need to put more time and effort into that. It felt a little bit light, really. You're collecting resources constantly on the map and putting it into the base building, but you're not really. You're just kind of upgrading the guerrilla camps. So I have to say, I've really been having a lot of fun here with the game. There's lots of stuff to collect on the map. There's lots of other activities to do. You've got your cockfighting, fishing, hunting, dominoes, guerrilla missions, if you want to partake in them. I haven't done an awful lot of that, but I have been having a lot of fun with this game. And honestly, if I'm being honest, this is probably my favourite Far Cry game I've played so far. Yes, it still feels a little bit bloated at times, but there's still a lot to do here, and I really do hope they perfect some of these mechanics going forward, because I do think there's a really special Far Cry game in our future if they get that bit right. So I'm going to give this one an 8.5 out of 10. Really enjoyed my time with it, so thank you very much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this review.